All right, class. First off, as always, good day. I'm glad you're here. Really quickly, I do apologize for the tardiness of this video. I meant to make it earlier, but some instances came up. So now I'm making this. So now, all right. If you're waiting for this video, I do apologize for that. Okay. Also, I usually have the questions with me on what the warm up is and things like that. I also forgot that paper too. I do apologize again for that. Okay. So let's go ahead and start off with the objective today. We're going to analyze how the. Oh, my bad. This is the wrong one. Hold on one second, guys. All right. Yeah, that was an error on my part. I had the wrong class up. So, yeah, sorry about that. But we're going to be looking at the end of Washington presidency. We're going to be looking at the Adams presidency, and we're going to be looking at the election of 1800. Okay. Now here's your warm-up picture. You guys should have the questions on your warm-up paper already in front of you, so go ahead and answer those questions. Again, I don't have the worksheet with me. I usually do, but I cannot find it. I don't know where it's at. So again, I do apologize for that. So go ahead, answer those two questions. But we're moving on in three, two, one. All right. Last class we were talking about Alexander Hamilton and his idea for having a national bank. And the thing is, there was some resistance, especially from Thomas Jefferson and the Southern congressmen. Now, the thing is, they were like, okay, you know what? We'll, you know, give you this whole banking thing. We'll give you the votes you need, but we need something in return. And they wanted, what they asked for was to have the capital actually moved from New York to Southern land. Now, thing is, Washington, who was from Virginia, he kind of wanted that too. And Alexander Hamilton kind of got the idea that, hey, this is what it's already going to be in progress. Because again, when people they listen to Washington when he says something, so he saw this as an opportunity, basically as, hey, it's a win-win for me. So he said, okay, I'll agree to that. So the capital was moved, and it was moved down south. Now the thing is, Washington, like I said, had an idea where he wanted this land. Okay, and it was this marsh, swampy land area, and everyone's like, "Oh yeah, Washington, yeah, that'd be a great place to put the capital." So the thing is, that set of land, it was actually between Virginia and Maryland. So the states donated that land, and that's where our capital is today. So our Washington D.C. is not in just one state; it's technically in two. Okay. Now the thing is, there is one big blemish on Washington's reputation. People tend to think he was perfect and he was so great, which he was pretty awesome. But there was one big problem: the Whiskey Rebellion. This was basically they put a big tax on whiskey. Now, usually that's like no problems, like okay, whatever, sure. Problem was there was a lot of Western farmers who basically really relied on making whiskey and selling it in order to make a living. Problem was now with this tax, it made things harder for them, and so they retaliated. They went after tax collectors. They robbed mail. Now that nowadays doesn't sound too bad. People are like, who cares? They robbed the mail. But you have to remember, back in this time, people were scattered. They were miles away from people. So letters from a cousin from the next state, that was really what they relied on. Newspapers coming in, telling them what's happening in the main cities. So if they don't get that mail, they're kind of like cut off from the whole world. So it was kind of a big thing back then. And anyone who paid the taxes, who was making whiskey, they basically had their equipment destroyed. And their main equipment they used to make alcohol was called stills. And they were basically destroyed by people who said no to the taxes, you know. So Washington decided, you know what, I'm putting my foot down, and he sends 13,000 troops, not state militia, United States Army troops to go into these areas and basically smudge out the rebellion. And that's what happens. So some people see this as a like excessive use of the military force to stomp out a small thing, you know, but Washington did it. So this is really considered the one only big blemish on his career as president. So the only thing that's really important on this part is that Bolden section. The Anti-Federalists actually changed their name to be called the Democratic Republicans, or some people just straight call them Republicans. Okay, that's the only big part on this one. Now, here's the thing. Washington completes his 2 terms. People are telling him, oh, you should run for a third. And he's like, no, uh-uh. Why am I going to run a third time? That, we just fought a war getting rid of a king. Why would I stay on for 12 years? I'd be basically making myself a king. So no, he limits himself to 2 terms, 8 years, and people are very deeply saddened and they're hurt and things like that. And he gives his farewell address. And he basically warns people about the dangers of political parties. Remember, he doesn't have a political party. Both sides love him. So he's the only president who never joined a political party, but yet he saw what was happening between people like Adams, Hamilton, Madison and Jefferson. He saw that the split really between the two people who were truly friends, that politics spread them out and made them, enemies. And he basically said in his farewell address, steer clear of permanent alliances with any portion of the foreign world, you know. And he gave that warning, and still you can see today now how it is if you watch the news and things like that. So, John Adams, he becomes a new president. He takes over when there's a little tension between the United States and France. Now, France is upset with the Americas because we signed a treaty with Britain. Okay, France was looking towards us to help them out when it came to fighting the British. Remember, the British and the French, they hate each other. They really go at each other all the time. So, them two are constantly fighting. And the French were like, well, hey, we helped you out during the Revolutionary War. You going to help us out? So France then started saying, you know what, we're going to capture some of these American ships that are out in the sea. And they would catch people and then basically force them to join their side. Either die or join the French army or navy. And that's what happened. So there was an undeclared war that happened, and this went all the way until 1800. By the time Adams' administration finally finished, the conflict was over. But the election of 1800, you're going to find out right now that it was kind of a problem, a little mess. So here's your first question. Do you think Washington was right about political parties? I mean, honestly, pause the video, look at online, look up politics, U.S. politics, and you'll find stories about Democrats, Republicans, and things like that, and how they're constantly fighting each other. And again, stuff you've heard, stuff you've seen in your own family, your friends, things like that. Tell me what you think. Okay. So pause the video because we're moving on in 3, 2, 1. Oh, forgot to mention this part. Yeah. Okay. So the Federalists, they had a majority in Congress, and they were really upset with all these Democratic Republicans criticizing them and basically saying stuff about them like, "Oh, they suck. Oh, they're driving our new country down the toilet." So they passed this thing called the Alien and Sedition Act in 1798. Basically, what this did is it made it a crime to verbally or to by print make false, scandalous, and malicious lies about the federal government or the officials. Now, that's kind of going against what the Bill of Rights says, but we're going to get to that in a second. The other part was the Alien Act. Now, what does that mean? Basically, a lot of immigrants that were coming to our country, they were anti-British because, again, Britain was a very big country in that they were conquering a lot of land, a lot of territory. So they were invading a lot of areas, saying this is ours, and they're fighting people for it and things like that. So obviously, these people don't like the British, and so when they come into our country, these Democratic Republicans would be like, "Hey, you guys hate Britain? We do too. You should join our political party group, and we can, then go against Britain." So a lot of these immigrants were signing up for them. They're like, "Yeah, we don't like them." They would sign up, and some of them didn't even know what they're signing up for. They just heard hate Britain, things like that. Bit Britain bad, and like, yeah. They some of them don't know English, so this law made it hard for these up and coming uh, foreigners to gain citizenship, and this left them very, very vulnerable to where the point where they could be deported without any type of trial or anything like that. You know, um, so imagine going on a boat for several months, get here, somebody's telling you, "Hey, do you hate Britain?" You're like, "Yeah, well, sign it. Here, put your name here." Okay, sign up, and then basically some people who work for the government basically round you up, throw you in a cage, and basically say, "Yeah, we found you guilty of this. Um, you're going back to your country," and there you go, back on the boat for another several months. You know. So in 1798, 1799, states started fighting back against the Alien Sedition Act, basically saying it goes against the Bill of Rights, especially the first one, freedom of the press. Hey, the press can say some stuff, Um, you have the right to a grievance as a citizen, meaning you can say the stuff that the government sucks, without feeling that the government's going to attack you. You have that right as a citizen. So the states fought back, and eventually they did win. Now, here's my second question to you: should the media, news stations, radio, newspaper, magazines, social media, should they be punished when somebody is making false, scandalous, and malicious reports on individuals or organizations? Should they be punished? They say, "Hey, oh yeah, so and so is they're taking money from the people." And they're not. It's found out that they're not. Should those news people, news stations, radios, newspaper people, social media people on TikTok, Snapchat, Instagram, YouTube, things like that, should they be punished for spreading those lies? You know, should they? And let's just say, because I had this in class, someone says, well, what if someone's saying something that someone else said? Well, that's just again spreading the rumor. They didn't do any investigation. They didn't look into that if that person was telling the truth or not. They just heard it. They repeated it. So that's spreading the fire in a sense. So yeah, those people who spread the fire are just as guilty as the ones who started it. So should those people be punished in some way or another? Tell me what you think. All right, pause the video, write down your response. But we're moving on in three, two, one. All right, so now we get to the election of 1800. This one was unique because the thing is, how it worked back in the day was when you voted for president, whoever got first place, that's president. Whoever got second place was vice president. The thing is, there was a tie. Yeah, there was a tie between Aaron Burr and Thomas Jefferson. Jefferson's right there. Um, and so it came down to the electors, the people in Congress. And these guys voted like 36 times. And each time it was like, it kept going to a tie, kept going to tie, tie, tie. And finally, it came down to like Alexander Hamilton was actually talking to some people, some senators. Now, again, Hamilton and Jefferson did not like each other. They did not like each other. However, Hamilton did say, hey, at least with Jefferson, you know what you're getting because he tells you straight up, I believe in this, I don't believe in that, I believe in this. Burr, on the other hand, is always playing the fence. He's like, he kind of tells you what you want to hear, and then when it comes down to it, he's like, it's like, wait, you told me this. It's like, oh well, I meant this. So he likes to play politician, and that's what Alexander Hamilton was like. No, you guys should vote for Jefferson, and that's what happens. Jefferson wins, and that made Burr the vice president, and then eventually later on, uh, Burr shoots Alexander Hamilton in the famous duel. Okay, now the thing is, the important thing about this election was that the Federalist Party, which was behind um, Washington and behind Adams, they were not behind uh, Thomas Jefferson. But they lost their election. They lost. They were basically swept out of Congress. The thing is, they walked out. They said, "Okay, yeah, we were voted out. We lost. So those senators who beat us in the election, here's my spot. Here's this and that. Your turn." And this shocked the world. Hey, these guys did not be like, oh, well, no, it wasn't a fair election. Oh, no, 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 there was something wrong. Oh, no, 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 we're not going to give up our seats so easily. It was like, no, we lost. Here you go. It's your guys' turn. You guys are now in power. This really changed some people's perspective of the United States. Like, oh, these guys are trying to pretend to be democratic. No one's ever going to give up their power just like that. And they did. And there was really a peaceful transition of power all the way up until this year, until 2021. Um, yeah, there's been like a little snickering here and there, a little bad taste, and a little, they're coming in, things like that. But that's common. But as to have people storming a Capitol building, that's totally different. But what happened was that election of 1800, it brought about the 12th Amendment, in which people said, okay, instead of whoever gets second place is president, no. If you're voting for president and then you're voting for vice president. And typically what happened, a lot of people would be like, hey, I'm Thomas Jefferson. This is my vice president, so-and-so. We're running for president and vice president. So typically when people picked one person for president, they chose their running mate as the vice president, typically. So that's why it always worked out well. But later on the election, or later on in the future, they do change the law to be where the president and vice president are on the same ticket. So when you vote for president, you're voting for the vice president as well. All right, so here's your exit ticket. Remember, you're only going to pick one question. All right. So if the Federalists had not released their power during the election of 1800, do you think we would have had a civil war? Or do you think we would have solved this whole issue without any bloodshed? If you don't know what civil war means, it's basically when citizens go against citizens. There's usually in a war, it's fought from other countries. In a civil war, it's your countrymen versus your countrymen, and they go at it. So that's one question. The other question you can answer is this one. If people had listened to Washington and not gotten into political parties, how much different do you think our country would be? Do you think it'd be better? Do you think it'd be worse? Do you think we'd get things done? Or you think things would be so tied up? What do you think? Try to imagine our country without political parties back in Washington days to now. There were no political parties. Would we be different? Better, worse? Why would you say that? Why wouldn't you say that? Okay. So once you've picked the one you want to answer and you've written it all down, that's it for this lesson. Okay. So good job. All right, you guys, you take care, you be safe, and I'll see you guys in class. All right.